Part 114. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1134. Weru is one of the top young hunters of the Libo tribe. Libo is a local dialect meaning red python. He is not tall and has dark skin. On his shoulders, chest, and arms, there are triangles, spirals, straight lines, red, black, and white tattoos, one after another. Even on the left cheek, there is a claw-shaped tattoo. This is a memorial to him holding a spear and killing a demon tiger. That time, the elder of the tribe personally took the burnt golden eagle wing bone and gave him this tattoo, and the most beautiful girl in the tribe gave him a kiss on the tattoo. This was last year. Now, the girl he kissed has become his wife and moved into his wooden house. Now, Varu faces a new choice. Do you really want to follow Lin Xing? There was a soft click beside him. The branch was trampled down, and the young warrior who spoke sat down next to him with a spear. Going to the black old forest? It's dangerous there. Aren't you afraid that if you go in and get out, Nai is with someone else? Lin Xing will take care of us. Varu smiled innocently and looked at Nebo who was talking to him. Nebo is slightly taller than him, his skin is equally dark, and he also has layers of tattoos on his body, but there are no tattoos on his face. Besides, Nai has a baby in her belly. Those Lin Xing always have good things in their hands. I want to ask for some good medicinal materials so that my baby can have good qualifications when she is born. What will she study in the future? It's all easier. Then you will fight with your life. Nebo frowned in disapproval. Varu continued to smile, looking at the elves gathered in a group and discussing from a distance, with soft eyebrows. Napo, I'm not like you. You are the son of the leader, and your father is the strongest warrior in the village. You have a share of all the best things. I can't. What I want, I can only use my spear to fight. He paused the spear with force, and the heavy end of the wooden spear hit the ground with a dull thud. After a pause, he sighed again. Besides, haven't you always said that the hunting grounds in the village are getting smaller and smaller? Clear the old black forest so that we can hunt there. In this way, it is better to go to war with other tribes and compete for the hunting grounds. Nebo was speechless for a moment. He was silent for a while and whispered. I'm telling you something, but don't tell anyone else. My father's father, well, my father's father's father. He started cracking his fingers. Varu waited quietly, watching him push it over and over again. After 2 back and forths, he finally gave up. Anyway, it's my ancestor who followed Lin Xing to the old black forest. Then, the first baby he gave birth to after he came back was a freak. He suddenly lowered his voice, which was cold and hoarse, making Varu shrug in shock. Nebo came close to his face, forehead almost touching his, with a serious face. I'm not lying to you. It's something that happened to our ancestors. The baby was born with 2 heads. That baby was mummified by the village elders. You can still see it now. Varu shuddered violently. He stared at the elves for a long time, then looked back at the village with nostalgia, and murmured. What should we do? If you want to go, I won't stop you, Nebo whispered. When you come out of the old black forest, you must remember to ask Lin Xing to exorcise evil spirits for you. That night, Varu didn't sleep well. He tossed and turned and thought about the freaks. The next day, he finally plucked up the courage and ran to find Ashmoon Song. Exorcism. Ashmoon Song was both angry and funny. Regarding the dangers in contaminated areas, there are many hypotheses in the study of elves, but none of them are related to exorcism. She thought for a moment and patted the other person comfortingly. Don't worry, we will definitely do the exorcism and other things when we come out. Moreover, we are also studying now to reduce the danger of the contaminated area as much as possible to prevent it from harming you. This research is naturally led by greed. Gretel divided the mice into 20 or 30 groups and used all the isolation methods he could think of. Native clothes, completely covering the cage, simulating closed full-body armor. Deer skin simulates full-body armor. Snake skin simulates full-body armor. Iguana skin, python skin, crocodile skin, anaconda skin. Gum full-body armor. Rubber full-body armor. Various materials focus on protection, plus air filtration. Experimental group, control group. Provide water, feed, ventilate, filter, and shovel poop. Turn off the radiation source regularly and allow the experimenter to go in and take care of the animals. Gretel thought he had made all kinds of preparations. However, just as the experiment began, reality gave him a blow. Why doesn't it eat? Gretel screamed. At least half of all the rats were huddled in the corner, screaming, digging at the cage, and huddled together. Some bite each other, and some bite themselves constantly. In short, they just don't eat or drink water. Rats in the laboratory are indeed prone to stress. But in Greet's impression, these rats just caught from the wild are relatively thick-skinned and not so delicate. Furthermore, why are some groups of mice severely stressed and some groups not so stressed? Gretel quickly commanded the invisible servant to close the lead plate in front of the radiation source, and then dragged Moonsong over. Uge was dragged by him and staggered. He ran in to take a look and blurted out. "Fool! Ah!" Gretel looked at her with pleading eyes. His eyes were watery, wet, and looked blank and innocent, making Ashuej want to rub his head. So she stretched out her palm and crumpled Greet's hair into a bird's nest. "You're going to scare these rats to death. Snake, eat the mouse. Anaconda, eat the mouse. Iguana, eat the mouse," Moonsong pointed one by one. She didn't even need to look at the patterns, she could identify the origin of these animal skins just by their smell. Although crocodiles and anacondas don't eat mice, they don't mind getting a snack if a mouse hits their mouth. The mice are surrounded by their scent, which scares them to death. Huh? Then what should I do? Have you never raised a mouse? Ashuej asked in a desperate tone. Greet shook his head vigorously. Basically never raised. He is a medical student. Clinical medicine. Not a biology major. No rats? After traveling here, when he started raising rats, someone was already there, and all the work was done by natural mages and necromancers. What does a mouse need to eat, how many meals a day, how much it drinks, how much it poops, what shape is considered normal and what shape is considered abnormal? He has no idea. Forget it, you don't have to worry about it, Aizwij blasted him. Gretel couldn't help herself, and she staggered out after being pushed by her. She pushed her to the entrance of the research institute and pushed her out. Jasmine. Dizia. Aneri. Come and help. Greet stayed close to the side, watching several elf casters chatting and laughing, and walked in together. He only had time to hold the door open and shout. "Remember to follow my procedures. Otherwise, the experimental results will be inaccurate." "I know. Go about your business." Gretel, who was kicked out of the Institute of Nuclear Radiation Biology, had no choice but to put all his energy into another institute. He stood at the door from a distance, controlled the invisible servant through the light screen, and worked. Open the lid. Inspire Cloud Chamber scroll. Measurement readings, well, I have to do this myself, 1, 2, 3, 4. Close the lid. Next. Open the lid. He observed one by one and recorded one by one. The samples Idian took out from the Elven secret realm and from the surrounding contaminated areas were divided into portions by Greet, put into different lead boxes, and mixed evenly with different ores. There is no obvious difference in the readings, the same sample, mixed with different ores, after the same time, there is no obvious difference in the readings. So, is there no borax in this? Gretel is sad, Gretel squats on the ground, Gretel pulls back his hair. Or am I remembering it wrong? Borax is only effective when thrown into the reactor. It has no effect on reducing pollution and absorbing radiation in peripheral contaminated areas. In that case, you can't just sprinkle a lot of borax all over the mountains and forests. You have to take all kinds of ores directly to places where there may be burning ore veins, and then throw them in one by one, and try them one by one. What a big project this is. In order for them to bring various mineral sands in for testing, first of all, they have to find a way to safely enter and exit the contaminated area, at least, a relatively low-cost or low-burden method to safely enter and exit the contaminated area. So the question comes back again. Sister Uge, how are you doing? It's early, Ashued shouted back. Look at what you've done. Mass soothing techniques, mass isolation of the breath of beasts, and isolation of the breath on clothes. You also have to make clothes from animal skins for them to wear. You are not torturing mice, you are torturing us. Isn't it true that we can't directly use people for experiments? Ashued and the others complained and complained, but they still took over taking care of the mice seriously and continued the experiment. 1, 2 days, half a month, a month. Rubber still performs best. If the cage is covered with rubber and cleaned regularly, not a single mouse will die. Yes, rubber has the strongest isolation ability. It has the largest amount and is the easiest to clean. It will be clean as soon as it is rinsed with water. And it's lightweight, just apply a layer of rubber to the fabric and you can make a waterproof cloak that can be worn for 2 months. It's decided that this is it. Everyone has a rubber cloak, a pair of boots, and a filter mask. Get ready within 3 days, and then set off together to clean up the contaminated area. 3 days later, Varu received a small white pill from Ashmoon Singer, took it in front of her, put on rubber boots, a rubber cloak, and a filter mask in front of her. Each elf led 20 natives to spread out and march towards the contaminated area. You came back safely. A month later, Nabo opened his eyes wide and walked around Varu in surprise. Amazing, amazing. People who used to go to Halaulin would vomit a few mouthfuls of blood and lose all their skin. You're not okay at all. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Roger for the 2000 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1135. Dear Teacher. After I left the Eagle Country, I headed south. Now, I have arrived in a new settlement and started a research that interests me. Attached are the phased research results during this period, Paper 1, Paper 2, Paper 3. These papers are very important and may allow us to establish a technical advantage over the glorious Holy See. It is up to the teacher to decide whether to publish them. Since Greed had indeed researched preliminary results, Elder Fahim was ready to fulfill his promise and help him send a letter back to his country. Of course, Gretel was also very generous and showed the letter and paper to the elder to make sure that he did not reveal any elven secrets in the letter. Although the teacher can probably guess where he is and which territory he is doing research on, well, since he can guess, he doesn't have to worry much. Elder Fahim was quite pleased with this attitude, so he just scanned it casually. After making sure that Gretel did not mention the words Elven Secret Realm, just let him go without changing a word. And Gretel didn't even mention the word elf. After briefly explaining the ideas and key points of several papers, the topic changed. During my research, I made a very wonderful discovery and wrote a paper based on it. And, based on this paper, I got feedback from the world and was successfully promoted to level 12. Oops, the teacher doesn't know if it will happen, No, the teacher definitely won't, but when my senior brothers and sisters see this letter, I wonder if their eyes will turn red with envy, thinking that I am advancing too quickly. Greet thought in a Versailles way. Of course, no matter how ordinary it is, this matter still has to be written down, otherwise it will not attract the teacher's attention. About the element iodine, why do isotopes appear? What is the essence of the rays released by radioactive isotopes? And what is the essential difference between an element and its isotopes? I am only a 12th level mage and am really unable to study these issues. I am attaching the materials used in my research. I hope that the teacher and the research team led by the teacher can do further in-depth research. A few thin pages of letters, plus a few thick stacks of papers, plus an even thicker box of original records and raw data. Elder Fahim was speechless, shook his head and sighed. Do you think legend can do everything? Do you know how much it would cost to send such a large box of stuff back to Nevis? Oh, compared with ore, a box of paper is nothing. Greet smiled as if he had turned into a bear and had just taken out a honeycomb. Besides, Elder Tapros also needs to give gifts, otherwise how can I be so embarrassed to ask him to help deliver letters? I already have several boxes of stuff, so I don't care about one more package of letters. Please, please. Elder Fahim shook his head helplessly. What should I do? This is a cub of my own clan. What else can the elders do besides pampering it? Even if you slap him on the head. It's a shoot, and you have to help him after the shoot is over. Greet not only sent a letter to the Lord of Thunder, but also sent a letter to Elder Tapros, containing a box full of gifts. Fruits, seeds, dried flowers, products of warcraft from the elf forest. There are all kinds of specialties rich in natural power, which he received as gifts from being a doctor here, and he picked them out and put them in a box. One package was given to Elder Tapros, and the other package was divided into 2 parts. Please help me send it to my teacher, Elder Irwin of Heartland City, and please help me send it to Elder Wood of Nevis. Gretel packed and sealed the birds one by one and shipped them in. As soon as Elder Fahim stretched out his hand, the shiny black-brown bird automatically jumped into his palm and chirped twice. After a while, a strong wind blew up. Gretel subconsciously raised his body. The invisible hurricane, which could not even lift a hair on his head, blew through his heart, causing his soul to tremble violently. In an instant, Elder Fahim, an old man with sagging skin and white hair and beard who was sitting in front of him, seemed to suddenly turn into a green giant. No, he didn't turn into a green giant, but the power of the entire forest was gathering towards him. Light green, emerald green, pale green, and dark green light spots rushed into his body from all directions. Plunging into his body and soul, he lifted the old elder up. With his illusory body on the ground and the sky above his head, he quickly rose up to a height that even surpassed the giant tree in the middle of the clearing. The giant slowly turned his head and looked towards the north. Gazed through the forest, past the storm islands, to the new continent on the other side. Then across the rough ocean, far, far away, looking in the direction of Nevis. Gretel subconsciously held his breath. When facing the heavenly nights of the glory holy sea, his spiritual power relied on the connection between the ancient trees to extend all the way to 200 miles away. He already felt that he had done a great job. However, now, Elder Fahim is just standing here, meditating without relying on any ancient tree, but Greet feels in a daze that the entire forest is gathered around him. Fertile forest. Riptide forest. Huge forest. With the elf secret realm as the center, every tree and every blade of grass is responding to the call of the elders. Provide him with strength, guide him in the direction, and fulfill his wishes. He is so strong. Cyrilla sighed softly. Beside her, Greet pinched her hand carefully, but had no time to speak. He is still appreciating the power of the elders, the power that integrates with nature and leads the direction of nature. This was the first time that a legendary master was attacking with all his strength just a few feet away from him. What a rare opportunity. I will become as powerful as him in the future. Greet thought silently and held Sarah's hand tightly. Maybe being so powerful can solve many problems. Ability to personally feel nuclei and electrons. Able to rub the electron microscope by hand. Can more truly feel the various mysteries inside the human body. Being able to go deep into the world of DNA and explore the fundamental mystery why this world is different from the previous world and why humans and creatures have become extraordinary. Like hundreds of rivers returning to the sea, the light spots pounced into the illusory green giant's body, and then poured into the ancient vine birds from the giant's palm. The color of the ancient vine bird ranges from dark brown to dark green, to green and brown. Finally, the little bird flapped its wings slightly, left the green giant's hand, and flew into the distance. Elder Fahim never opened his eyes. His eyes were slightly closed, and he sat quietly in front of Gretel, as if his soul had flown far away with the bird. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It wasn't until the sun's shadow set to the west and twilight enveloped everyone heavily that the elder breathed a long sigh of relief, opened his eyes and stood up. Gretel hurried over to help him and felt the old man's palms were cold and wet, and he placed them on his hands. I communicated with the mark on the ancient vine bird and asked him to fly back to its original owner. Don't worry, it has enough power and the legendary goal is big, so it won't fly in the wrong direction. So you just now? Greet asked with an innocent look. Elder Fahim smiled. I gave it a ride, to the edge of the forest. The main reason is that the power of the secret realm is too strong. I was afraid that it would take a wrong turn, so I was not afraid if it was sent to the edge. As the elder wished, the ancient vine bird flew all the way. According to the elder's understanding, follow the route that Greet has taken, go north along the coast, go north to the northern part of the New World, run to the east coast, and then fly across the rough ocean. More than 1 day ago, Elder Tapros's spiritual sense was suddenly touched. He spread his mental power from a distance, and not long after, the ancient vine bird that had been following him for hundreds of years broke through the clouds and fog and plunged into his palm. Elder Tapros. How far did this thing fly here? What happened after traveling so far? 2 days later, the Lord of Thunder thanked Elder Tapros and sent him away, then stayed alone in his study to open the letter. Look at the letter, and then look at the batch of supplies given to him in Greet's letter. The box, which was tightly sealed with lead, had bright yellow characters written on all 6 sides. Read the letter first and then unbox it. Read the letter first and then unbox it. The contents of the box are very dangerous. Very dangerous. Be sure to protect yourself as stated in the letter. Don't go ahead and dismantle it directly. Please study carefully to see if MalProtagonist can catch it. Lord of Thunder. Do I look like such a weak person? Do I seem to be such a careless person, casually dismantling unknown objects and playing with them? And, what kind of trick did little Greet get up to this time that he needed to be warned repeatedly in such a cautious tone? While cursing, he carefully read Greet's letter from beginning to end. Paper 1 is about the treatment of special cells. He glanced at 10 lines and sighed after reading. It's medical again, still medical. Little Gretel really threw himself into medical treatment and refused to come out. Paper 2 is about the detection method of special rays. The Lord of Thunder cheered up a little, read it carefully, and snorted. The people under Burbo's sect are useless. With such a huge budget, they haven't even come up with such a simple detection method. Forget it, let them develop the counting thing that Gretel mentioned that uses vacuum tubes and electricity to atone for their sins. If this cannot be developed, the entire research budget will be cut next year. Paper 3, about the damage and resistance of rays. The Lord of Thunder sighed silently. It's the same old idea again. Don't rely on magic, rely on materials, Try to cut down on levels and budget. Gretel, when will this kid be able to rely on magic as his ultimate support? As for paper 4. The Lord of Thunder's expression became serious. He read it carefully, then read it again, closing his eyes quietly. For a moment, he concentrated slightly and opened up the world of meditation. Several lead boxes were swallowed silently. The Lord of Thunder sat motionless, as if he had turned into a statue. After a long, long time, he suddenly opened his eyes, and there was thunder flowing through his eyes. Mr. Herman Cruz. Please help me contact Lord Jade Crown and Lord Time Barrier, and ask them to come over as soon as possible. Also, help me call Belbo and Philby over. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Cat finally wrote 3 million words today. Throw flowers. Spin in circles. Dance. 3 million words summon monthly ticket. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1136. The Lord of Thunder called, and the 2 older disciples urgently interrupted their experiments and rushed over. As soon as they arrived in the study room, they saw the teacher staring at them with a nose that was not a nose, and eyes that were not eyes, and threw a stack of materials in front of his face. Have a look. So what? So what? The project given by the teacher was preempted by others before we finished it? Or our students, students, or the magicians who work in the laboratory? Who is taking advantage of our momentum to cause trouble outside? Or, where is the Parliament's financial situation recently, and our laboratory's budget has been cut? The 2 great mages looked at each other, not daring to say a word, and lowered their heads to flip through the information urgently. After turning the first page, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, it wasn't any of the bad things they expected, but little Gretel sent another paper. So, the teacher was blowing at them and glaring at them. No, not blowing at them, just glaring at them because he thought their progress was slow. It's not slow anymore, teacher. It's already very fast. Apart from lying at home, spreading our limbs and relaxing our minds, having dinner with friends once a week, going to a show, opera, or concert every 2 weeks, the rest of our time has been thrown into the laboratory. When doing research, you don't just have to work hard to accumulate time. You need to have enough rest and relaxation to expand your ideas. Who wants to compare with a freak like little Gretel? Teacher, you are too biased. Ever since little Gretel came in, you can only see him and never see us again. While cursing, he looked down intently. Soon, Archmage Baebo's expression became solemn. A large amount of, material that emits that kind of radiation was discovered. This kind of ray is invisible and extremely lethal. If it could be fixed as a spellcasting material and Yanjian explosion added in large quantities, the lethality of this 8-ring spell would more than double. By extension, if it can be used as a spellcasting material, it can be extended to all light-based killing magic, but how the magician protects himself is a problem. Find a way to detect rays? Is it such a simple method? No wonder the teacher is angry. Neither he nor his disciples have even used their brains in this direction. Discovered, isotopes. Isotopes. Isotopes of a specific element with the same chemical properties but different weights that can emit rays. Teacher. I will ask them to remeasure all the elements immediately. In an instant, various measurement results flew through Archmage Baebo's mind. After Greed proved the existence of oxygen and pushed matter from molecules to atoms, dozens of elements have been discovered so far. Among them, the density of many elemental elements will be slightly different when measured by different magicians, and these differences even exceed the scope that can be explained by insufficient purification and insufficient magic array. Now it seems that it is because many elements have such isotopes? No need. The Lord of Thunder shook his head slightly. He cast his cold eyes on the female disciple. Archmage Philby shuddered subconsciously and immediately said, "I will speed up the research and development of the electron microscope. What Greed wants, the vacuum tube that can measure ray readings, I will develop it as soon as possible." How many pieces should I make? I'll deliver it to him. This is a small job. The Lord of Thunder looked at her with dissatisfaction. Philby quickly sped up her words. I'm trying to use an electron microscope to look at different elements. Let's try and see if we can decipher the mystery of isotopes with direct observation. The Lord of Thunder hummed slightly and stopped talking. Suddenly, he raised his hand and the study door slid open. Mr. Ripley of Jade Crown and Mr. Steiner of Time and Space Barrier stepped in at the same time. What's the matter, Christine? You called us in such a hurry. What happened? As soon as the legendary mage arrived, the two disciples of the Lord of Thunder stood up at the same time, saluted and gave way. The two excellencies nodded and smiled at them, each took the paper handed over by the Lord of Thunder, and quickly began to read it. After reading the second paper, his face became serious and his lips moved, but he just kept silent. After reading all the papers, Time and Space Barrier, Mr. Steiner quickly raised his head. The substance that emits rays? Where is it? Is it possible for us to get it? Is it possible for the people of the glorious Holy See to get it? People from the glorious Holy See should not be able to get it, the Lord of Thunder replied slowly. I know this place. In the hinterland of the dense forest in the southern part of the New World, there is a very strong ancient seal protecting it. Those pointed ears are old and stubborn, and they won't even let me go in and have a look. If they don't want an all-out war, tisk. Is Gretel in danger? Your Excellency, Jade Crown was startled. The corners of the Lord of Thunder's lips curled up slightly. He won't. The little guy has half-elf blood, and this time it was brought in by the elf. As long as he doesn't seek death and runs to the seal center, there will definitely be no problem. What? His Excellency Jade Crown was stunned for a moment. Turning his head and looking sideways, Lord Time and Space Barrier beside him kept his eyebrows unmoving and nodded slightly. That's right. I sent people to investigate the little guy's life experience. The alchemy legend breathed a sigh of relief. Speaking of which, he had seen Gretel only a handful of times. Even though he saw that he had magic that concealed his appearance, he would not stare at him carefully in front of the Lord of Thunder. As for the half-elf blood, then he doesn't care even more, those are Christian's disciples, not his disciples. The Lord of Thunder can just be responsible to the council. The secret realm of elves? He pondered slightly. It is impossible for the glorious Holy See to get this kind of place unless it launches a large-scale attack. However, it is also very difficult for the Parliament to get it, negotiating with the elves. Please, whose holy land, even if a large group of people have moved away and only a few people are left to guard the abandoned holy land, is willing to allow people to walk in and wander around? Apart from that place, where else can I find the same ore with similar effects? The Lord of Thunder simply spread his hands. Ripley was stunned and laughed. Okay, my mission. First, activate the alchemist to retest all the elements and try to find more, according to the little guy, isotopes. Second, in the process, quietly search for ore and mines that emit rays. Archmage Baebo and his junior sister exchanged glances. No wonder when he asked for help, the teacher said no need. It turned out that he had already made up his mind to leave the task to this alchemy legend. Measuring elements is their job, so they must do it quickly and well. By the way, it is very easy to find similar ores and mines, and it will not alarm people at all. So, it's my business to develop suitable defensive spells for this kind of ray. Time and space barrier, Mr. Steiner said with a smile. This white-haired old man is the leading protection mage in the council, and he has always had experience in magic defense. The Lord of Thunder smiled and nodded to him, then shook his head. That's not the point. I read Greet's paper and I also sensed what he sent. To tell you the truth, my inspiration was touched in an instant. Whether you can advance to the next level, I guess, depends on this. Oh, the two senior legends were moved at the same time. The Lord of Thunder is almost the youngest among the group of legendary mages left behind in the council. As for the level, in the past few years, it was only the legendary first level. Although the combat power, or lethality, has caught up with the legendary second level. In recent years, he has made great progress and has crossed the threshold of the second level of legend. As for the legendary third level, the kind that can compete with the top masters of the glorious Holy See is still far away. And now, the Lord of Thunder said that this paper and this batch of materials gave him a premonition of coming into contact with the legendary third level? What do you need? Lord Time Barrier asked urgently. The Lord of Thunder shook his head. It's not necessary yet. I still need to study the things little Gretel sent me carefully. I have to solve the problems he raised before I can take a step forward. But now, if little Greet wants anything, or you want to send something over, just place an order. Your Excellency, Time and Space Barrier, interfaced without hesitation. His bright eyes circled around the room, stopped for a moment on the two disciples of the Lord of Thunder, and then looked at each other inquiringly. Are these papers to be kept secret for the time being and not released? During the research process, what personnel and materials are needed, can we secretly allocate them? It's best to keep it secret for now and don't let the other side know. The Lord of Thunder nodded slowly. I'll give you a share of what little Greet sent you. You should study it carefully. Don't be injured by that ray, absolutely. Archmage Baebo and Archmage Philby took a step back, then took another step back. Ahead, an energy field spreads out, soft and hazy, vaguely present. Looking at Mr. Steiner across the energy field, it seems as if he is separated by thousands of mountains and rivers. Time and space barrier is well deserved. Opposite this energy field, a silver-white electric field quietly emerged. Electric snakes coiled around, and electric sparks crackled, circling around the Lord of Thunder, but there was also a soft and quiet feeling. The energy field and electric field silently connected and then separated immediately. Mr. Steiner's silver-white hair suddenly rose up. Oh! He stared at the Lord of Thunder, speechless for a moment. The Lord of Thunder nodded to him and then turned to His Excellency Jade Crown. In a moment, a colorful and unstable field appeared, silently connecting with the electric field of the Lord of Thunder. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The two meditation worlds separated. The alchemy legend took back the sample that belonged to him and suddenly jumped up as if he had been shocked by electricity. Christine. You. Before he could speak, he jumped out of the study window like a rabbit with an arrow and fell straight down. Lord Time Barrier stood up, nodded to the Lord of Thunder, and stepped out of the window. The special nature of this thing is nothing if not revealed. Once revealed, it is so profound and magical that he simply cannot extricate himself. You have to go back and study it quickly. He didn't want to waste a minute or a second. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of double monthly pastime. Cat already has 936 votes. Can it reach 1,000 votes today? 3 million words, please vote. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1137. Jade Crown Lord Ripley was so anxious that he rushed out. The lead box that the Lord of Thunder handed over to him just now, where is that lead box? To him, it is the most precious treasure in heaven and earth, and the highest dream of all alchemists. What is the ultimate in alchemy? It's the Midas touch. It's elemental transformation. It is to convert other cheaper and lower metals into gold. Countless people worked hard, countless people fought for it, countless people spent their lives on this, and even countless people, cheated and abducted. Someone once got close, could convert gold from liquid, and could proudly claim that he had done it. But in the end, gold is still gold. It's always been there. Whether it is dissolved in strong acid or precipitated by metal replacement, it is always there. Neither birth nor destruction, neither increase nor decrease. Not only gold, but also silver, brass, and various elements are always there. Going down to the atomic level, they have never changed. The magicians have exhausted all means, but they are unable to have any impact on the simple elements. However, now, that palm-sized, inch-thick box has only a ring-sized box in the middle, and there is nothing like dust in it. As long as you open a little bit of the lid in the substantive meditation space and let your spiritual power seep in just a little bit, this transformation legend who has devoted his whole life to alchemy can clearly feel. The elements inside are changing. It keeps boiling, keeps spinning, and keeps spitting out strange rays. Keep on turning into another element. If we generalize this method, wouldn't it be possible to make gold? Not only gold, but any element can be made out of it. Jade Crown Lord Ripley is very anxious. The contents of that box are changing and decreasing every second. For the Lord of Thunder, speaking for one more minute means that he loses 60 seconds of research time and countless materials that can be researched. He didn't even have time to say a kind word, didn't even have time to leave the door, and just jumped out of the window. That is to say, the windows here are under the control of the Tower Spirit of Babel, so they don't make a loud crash and directly hit the sky full of flowers and rain, throwing glass shards from high altitude. Time barrier. Although Mr. Steiner was shocked, he was not as shocked as the alchemy legend. However, facing these invisible and indeed lethal rays, he was also very motivated to study them. It is conceivable that when this material is promoted on a large scale and legendary mages and high-level mages dive into this research in large numbers, simple, effective, and low-cost protective magic must be what they need. According to Little Gretel, this substance that emits rays is extremely lethal to the human body, and even high-level and even quasi-legendary people cannot withstand it. It is not easy for the council to train magicians. You must study protective magic clearly. Archmage Baebo stood in awe, saluted with attention, and respectfully sent the two legends off. As soon as they were sent away, the Lord of Thunder turned his head and threw a palm-sized lead box to each of them, taking a leisurely look at them. Let's go back and study it right away. Archmage Baebo straightened his spine as if he was electrocuted. This thing Little Gretel sent is very important. Especially the different types of rays, their nature, and why these substances emit rays. We are studying them the same way. Pay attention to safety, the Lord of Thunder lightly reminded. You have all read the paper Little Greet sent. Take good care of it, use it if you have the magic puppet, and use the secret eye if you have it. Don't let me hear that you are here. Is teacher. We must do it, teacher. The two archmages answered in unison. Just kidding, a 19th level high-level warrior has been unable to heal for so many years just because he breathed in this dust. Can magicians like them be as physically strong as warriors? If something happens to me because of my research, I'm afraid that if I don't die, I will be hung up by the teacher and whipped. Speed up your research. In a few days, when you send back the letter to Little Greet, if you haven't even come out with preliminary results. Teacher, let's go study it immediately. The two archmages flew away. Go downstairs, each go to his own laboratory, invite the students to set up separate rooms, set up lead boards, lead doors, Set up magic barriers, order the students not to come in casually, and adjust the devil puppets to guard the door. Then, I devoted myself endlessly, eating and sleeping in the laboratory in intense research work. Way. Separate. Determination. Hey, this box of ashes doesn't seem to be the same element. It needs to be purified, and purified again. The two great mages were so busy that if the mages hadn't ensured 8 hours of sleep, they wouldn't even know when it was morning or night. Upstairs, the Lord of Thunder slowly closed his eyes and concentrated on his own little world again. Little Greet really gave him a big surprise. When he was traveling that year, he had also been close to the elf secret realm, but he was driven away before he reached the outskirts. At that time, there was no legend yet. I couldn't defeat him. If I wanted to sneak in, I couldn't hide from the perception of the natural legend in the big forest. Even so, the violent and boiling power in the elf secret realm still left a very deep impression on his mind. To this day, there is no day or day that I forget. Intelligent creatures, relying on their own strength, can actually create substances so powerful that they can compete with heaven and earth. There are such things in the elf secret realm and also on the everlasting island, but on a smaller scale. Unfortunately, Yangju Island was even more tightly defended, and he had no chance to get a closer look. A few years ago, when he went to kill the indigenous demigods, he flew over the New World and over the dense rainforest. Feeling it from a distance, the power at the center of the secret realm was still so powerful that it frightened him. But he didn't expect that little Gretel could actually convince the elf to scoop out the sample from the center of the violent secret realm and give it to him. Just by covering the sample with his own meditation world, the Lord of Thunder can feel the surging, violent, and ever-exploding power in the box. A small box as big as a ring can do this. If it were the center of the elf secret realm, I wonder what it would look like. And the samples in the box were emitting different rays every moment. The Lord of Thunder felt it with his spirituality. The types of those rays were different, some were light, some were heavy, and some were heavier than light. Light, some are much heavier than electrons. It's extremely chaotic in all directions. The only similarity is that each type of ray can make his spirit feel dangerous. Little Gretel said that a small-scale explosion on the outside would hurt even high-level warriors, and a large-scale storm in the center would annihilate even legends. Even the more peripheral contaminated areas are unprepared and will gradually suffer from strange diseases if they wait for a long time. The Lord of Thunder closed the box with a snap. After sealing these deadly things tightly, he knocked on the table and raised his voice. "Mr. Herman Cruz. Please show me the map and search the hills around Igor Peak. Which hills are there with hard and thick rocks that are not easily broken, have no water veins, and no mineral deposits? In particular, there is no magic crystal mine. Dear Lord of Thunder, please wait a moment." The voice of the tower spirit of Babel instantly came from the crystal ball in the upper right corner of the desk. "I will search for you immediately. The mountains that meet your requirements have been marked for hundreds of miles around Igor Peak. Please look at the map dash. Minus the hills that have been developed. Minus the hilltop where the mage tower has been built. Minus." As the requests were made one by one, the illuminated hills disappeared one after another on the three-dimensional map. In the end, only 2 peaks were left standing. A peak called Meglin Peak is located 30 miles southeast of Igor Peak. It is only half as high as Igor Peak, with a gentle slope and lush vegetation. Another one is called Ambit Peak, which is located northeast of Igor Peak. It is 2/3 as high as it is, with a solitary peak and a 1,000-foot wall. Except for a pair of golden eagles nesting on the top, there is not even a decent cave from the top of the mountain to halfway up the mountain. This is it. The Lord of Thunder pointed at Ambert Peak and said, "Mark it for me and I will open a laboratory there. In addition, help me mobilize 1,000 square meters of 5 centimeters thick lead plates, 20 square meters of 1 centimeter thick lead plates, and 1 square meter of leaded glass, advanced experimental magic 5 of them, 100 grams of gold foil. He rattled off a list. Mr. Herman Cruz remained silent until he finished his report before answering. Okay, Lord of Thunder. The required supplies will be delivered to your laboratory before 8 p.m., and they will be deducted from your experimental funds for this year. Please authorize me. Can't it be earlier? Sorry, there are a few supplies that need to be processed on site. They will be completed at 8 p.m., which is already the earliest. Okay. Confirm authorization. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the top of Igor Peak was already shrouded in deep night. Most of the magicians have already got off work and are taking the small train down the mountain to go home. Only a small number of particularly hard-working people are still working in the laboratory. The Lord of Thunder took stock of all the supplies, put them all into his personal space, and flew to Ambert Peak. He flew in a circle around the solitary peak, and found a small cave 1/3 of the way to the top, and ducked into it. As the spiritual power unfolds, the rocks on the cave wall soften silently and extend inwards. 1 meter, 2 meters, 10 meters, 50 meters. The Lord of Thunder slowly walked into the heart of the mountain, opened up a laboratory that he was satisfied with, released the golem, and began to erect the lead plates. Halfway through the fight, he suddenly turned around. Who? Christine, you also chose this place. A familiar voice floated from the entrance of the cave. Jade Crown Lord Ripley walked in slowly with 2 demon dolls. I'm still thinking that this cave is good and suitable for use as a laboratory. I think so too. On the other side of the mountain, a third voice sounded leisurely and with a bit of a wry smile. Double monthly pastime. Double monthly pastime. Thank you very much to everyone yesterday for putting me in the top 10 of the Fantasy Monthly vote list. Please continue to work hard today. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1138. The Magic Council occupies a large territory. However, it turns out that it meets all the conditions of independence, hardness, and no magic interference, and is suitable for building a radioactive laboratory. It is also the closest place to the Tower of Babel. In fact, there is only one place. Even a legendary mage, who can do teleportation as well as eating and drinking, doesn't want to commute hundreds of miles every day for nothing. Wouldn't it be better to be closer? Wouldn't it be great if you could reach the Tower of Babel in one step? If you have something to do, why don't you go back to your office and have a cup of tea? If there is any trouble at the Babel Tower, you can come back at any time to take charge of the overall situation, okay? Therefore, several legends have taken a fancy to this lonely peak. And Mr. Herman Cruz, the diligent and loyal tower spirit of Babel who acts according to the preset and never deviates even a step. Among the orders he received, it was obvious that there was no such thing as information needs to be shared between legends. The 3 legendary mages looked at each other and smiled. Then, they walked into the corridor one after another and looked around. The space here is not small. And the stone is very hard. It's rare that there is no interference. Iron mines, gold and silver mines, magic crystal mines, and all kinds of things that may interfere with the experimental results are basically non-existent. Except for the nest of golden eagles above, but this location is relatively low, the magic power of the golden eagles should not affect the laboratory. So, His Excellency Jade Crown placed 3 sofas casually, and the alchemy devil brought tea and water. The 3 of you sat down comfortably and began to discuss. Since everyone is interested, our laboratories can actually be combined. First of all, my research direction is to explore the internal structure of atoms and try to induce its power. The Lord of Thunder was the first to invite. Time barrier Mr. Steiner nodded, a very pleasant interface. It's a good thing to study together, and we can exchange ideas with each other. My direction is how to resist this kind of ray, and all the defense and protection in the laboratory can be left to me. My direction is the change of matter. You can leave it to me for precise monitoring and so on. Also, these substances are very dangerous and need to be operated remotely. You can also leave it to my puppet. The three of us just talked to each other and quickly progressed from communication research to laboratory planning. Speaking of which, His Excellency Jade Crown simply stood up and began to renovate the laboratory on the spot. The stones in the cave looked like they were made of plasticine, and they began to change according to his thoughts. Stretch, flatten, fit. A corridor that can accommodate 3 or 4 people walking side by side, a layer of protective walls, 3 areas and 2 passages, an open laboratory, a warm lounge, ventilation, decontamination, water supply and drainage, emergency passage, transmission device, storage room. Your Excellency, the time and space barrier is also helping. He has dropped a lot of magic, one by one, magic circles, early warning, defense, anti-detection, anti-infiltration, nested in circles. The lead plates that Greet requested were put on piece by piece. These lead plates, which would block, weaken and obliterate many magics, were easily nested in the magic circle in the hands of this protection legend without hindering each other. In half a night, the laboratory was completed. His Excellency Jade Crown threw out more than a dozen high-level demon dolls in one breath, guarding the door, serving tea and water, transporting supplies, operating the magic array. Basically, if you want, the 3 of you can sit comfortably in the lounge, sip tea or coffee, and watch the results remotely displayed on various monitoring magic arrays. Of course, in the early stages of research, it is still not possible to be so comfortable. The Lord of Thunder placed 3 large boxes in the center of the heavily defended warehouse. While placing them, he explained. This was sent to me by Little Greet. These 3 boxes were taken from different places. This one. He pointed to the lead box on the left. Taken from the outermost periphery, the energy response is the weakest. However, from inside, you can also feel obvious rays and material changes. The one in the middle was taken from a place in the secret realm where the energy response is relatively weak. However, it is obviously much stronger than the one on the left. He paused, his face became serious, and he pointed to the box on the far right. The material of that box seemed to be the most precious, and the overlapping magic spells and magic seals were also the most dense. Many of the spells are obviously not commonly used by humans, and have obvious alien and ancient characteristics. The contents of this box are taken from the mineral veins that have been burning in the center of the secret realm. It is best not to open this box at will. I have a feeling that the power inside is very, very strong. Naturally, they did not open the box immediately. The legends of the transformation system and the legends of the protection system each took the small amount of radioactive materials they were assigned to set up their own experimental facilities and experimental magic circles. The Lord of Thunder was left alone to slowly write and draw, design experimental ideas, and dismantle the magic array. Hey, I am so happy to have so many experimental materials to use. Especially when seeing other legends, I can only accept the pitiful experimental materials from his hands. He has never done such rich research. 2 days later, the legends reunited to exchange their latest discoveries. Jade Crown Mr. Ripley was the first to speak, beaming with joy. I found more radioactive materials. There is a lot of carbon in that box, carbon. It has exactly the same chemical properties as our common carbon, but the density is slightly different, and it emits rays. He was so excited that he couldn't speak at all. After emitting rays, the carbon turned into nitrogen. After I purified the radioactive carbon and left it for a period of time, I detected nitrogen in it. Are you sure it's made of carbon? Mr. Steiner of Space-Time Barrier asked cautiously. In the past few days, he has been measuring various rays, all kinds of different rays. Turn over and test, turn over and test, use every method he can think of to test, use the methods provided by Greet, use methods from other fields to test. For this reason, he did not even pay attention to the work of testing the elements themselves, or rather left it to the alchemy legend. But even so, he still has the basic concepts. It can't be that there is nitrogen in that box, right? This thing is in the air. I'm sure, Lord Ripley said with an expression on his face, you can insult my moral character, but you cannot insult the carefulness of my experiments. I evacuated that box. The extra nitrogen is definitely converted from radioactive carbon, nothing else. The three legends exchanged glances with each other. The Lord of Thunder said slowly, "This is a good thing. Speaking of which, this gave me an inspiration. How about we trick the Holy See?" "How to say?" Two heads came closer with interest. Who wouldn't want to trick the Holy See once? There is no one here who has a blood feud with the Holy See. No one's relatives, friends, teachers, or disciples have ever died at the hands of the Holy See. Like Mr. Ripley in Jade Crown, he had a beloved disciple who planned to inherit the mantle, but was seduced and ambushed by spies sent by the Holy See. Like Mr. Steiner of Time Barrier, he himself was born in the kingdom of Rhine, became a magician by chance, was not tolerated by the Holy See, and escaped to Nevis after all kinds of hardships. And his parents, brother-in-law, wife, and the whole family were all killed by the Holy See. When the Lord of Thunder was young, he traveled around the continent incognito. Wherever he went, he killed so many lackeys of the Holy See that he himself had forgotten. Look, the Holy See has always banned alchemy and has always said that it is the magic of the devil. A few years ago, after we proved the existence of atoms. After that, the Holy See intensified its efforts, claiming that the atom was the indestructible cornerstone of the world created by the Lord of Glory, and was an eternal and unchanging existence. No matter how powerful human power is, it cannot shake the power of the Lord of Glory. We'll prove it to them. Ripley clapped his hands, looking excited. Steiner frowned slightly. How to prove it? Do the experiment in public? Are they still going to invite their people to see it? Not to mention they are unwilling. Even if someone sees it with their own eyes, will they recognize such a subtle difference? Who wants to do experiments in public? The Lord of Thunder smiled. He turned to His Excellency Jade Crown and shook his finger. I remember that there was an article published in Philosopher's Stone 2 months ago, saying that many gemstones can be pressed out of pure elemental powder under specific conditions. That's right, the legendary alchemist nodded calmly, but it's very expensive, very expensive. It's better to mine natural gems. Do you want to? At this point, he suddenly shut up. The three legendary mages spoke in unison and gave the answer. Press a diamond with radioactive carbon. Diamond. Whether it is a magician, a natural god, a temple of the god of war, a temple of the goddess of springs, or a religion of radiance, it is the most precious gemstone. It can inspire powerful magic or divine spells, and can also show the majesty of gods. On the crown of the Glory Pope, there is a round white diamond the size of a dove egg, which is so bright and majestic that it cannot be looked at. The scepter held by the Pope during his coronation is also inlaid with a drop-shaped diamond, which is light blue and symbolizes the authority of the sky and sea. We make one, and then send it there through smuggling channels. I don't believe that with such a big diamond, they wouldn't wear it every day. And wearing a radioactive diamond every day, If they are set on a crown, a scepter, or other places, we will expose them after a few years and say that they are not favored by the gods, and even the gems on the crown will be deformed. His Excellency Time and Space Crown whispered. And Jade Crown. Mr. Ripley curled up the corner of his mouth with a malicious smile. Storing spells in diamonds has always relied on the natural structure of diamonds. If this diamond will become smaller, become nothing, and turn into nitrogen, even if only a little bit of it turns into nitrogen. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's the penultimate day of double monthly passes. Everyone, please vote hard. Please, please, let the cat stay in the top 10 of the fantasy monthly vote list. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 1,500 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1139. Chapter 1136 Lack of radioactive elements. Can I get some more from Gretel? The additive version of Diamond took much more time than the legendary mages estimated to make piece by piece. Throughout the process, I went through countless modifications and complaints. This radioactive carbon, how fast does it turn into nitrogen? In a year or two, we are going to mock the Holy See and find that the change is so small that it is impossible to detect it. Let me take a look. Hey, wait for me to measure this number again. His Excellency Jade Crown rubbed his eyes and rushed back to the laboratory. 2 days later, he walked out of the laboratory dejectedly with heavy steps, like the golden eagle above his head who was forced to move away and did not even dare to curse. It seems, it will take more than 10,000 years for it to all disappear. More than 10,000 years? Doesn't that mean that it will take 1,000 years for 1/10 to disappear, and 100 years for 100th to disappear? It will take at least 100 years before we can mock the Holy See. Otherwise, add something else. His Excellency Jade Crown glared at a pair of blood-red eyes that had seen too many instruments, and scratched his bird's nest-like hair. Anyway, there are quite a lot of radioactive things in this box, including this one. This time, even the Lord of Thunder, who was in urgent need of combat power, put down his research and came over to analyze various radioactive elements. Sharpening the knife does not waste time chopping wood. Different types of radioactive elements are placed on the table at once. There may be one that is particularly suitable for its lethality. This, do you feel it? Why do I feel like my eyes disappear in the blink of an eye? Is this the radioactive iodine in little Greets paper, right? If my calculation is correct, it's only 8 days. This is a new element, an element I have never seen before. On the other experimental table, Lord Time and Space Barrier became excited. If you discover and confirm a new element and place it on a young magician of level 5 to 10, you will not be able to get away with a new magician award. Although legendary mages do not need this kind of honor, discovering one more new element means expanding their cognitive boundaries a little more. Somehow, the path to advancement will become easier. The time it takes for this new element to change, let me measure it. Hey, why can't I measure it? Let me take a look. The other two mental powers covered it together. Rays do exist, and changes in atoms do exist. Maybe there are too few. Maybe we should adjust our measurements. The legendary mages had a heated discussion and even quarreled. Finally, they each retained their sanity and the quarrel did not turn into a fight. Half a month later, a piece of pigeon egg-sized piece with rich blue light, like a diamond that condensed the entire ocean, was finally placed in the lead box in front of them. The rays are very strong. If worn close to the body, ordinary people will have obvious symptoms in about a month. Professionals are better off, but by the time they find out, it will be too late. The Lord of Thunder crossed his fingers, leaned back on the sofa, and breathed out a comfortable sigh. On the left, Lord Time and Space Barrier frowned slightly. Wouldn't such a strong lethality cause them to be alert? Although the level of predictions of the glorious Holy See is not as good as ours, it is not impossible. Inject magic into it? Make an excuse, such as giving it to the Blood Prince or the Beastman King, but they stopped you on the way. This may very well cost our people. Besides, the Glory Pope may not be willing to wear a diamond given to a foreign race. My idea is to put it among the diamonds mined in the Black Continent and transport it there naturally. Then let Helena join. She is the most proficient in how to cover up dangerous aura without leaving any trace. The legend of the magic system, Ms. Helena Dark Blue Song, who controls the secret lock of Igor Peak, is indeed very interested in this plan. Of course, she didn't join for nothing. Not only did they take away a portion of radioactive material from the Lord of Thunder for research, but they also robbed a batch of large and small scattered artificial gemstones from His Excellency Jade Crown. In the words of MS Song of the Deep Sea, "I'm just doing research on the difference between artificial gemstones and natural gemstones in terms of adding magic. Otherwise, what's the point of working so hard to make a bunch of artificial gemstones? Are they used to set jewelry? Madam, when you say this, can you please stop holding the sapphire on your finger?" Alchemy Legend still had some sense left and did not say these words. He presented the pile of practice works with a smile, and 5 days later, he received back a bright blue diamond that no longer had any dangerous aura. This blue diamond traveled across the ocean and landed on a ship transporting treasures from the Black Continent to the Kingdom of Brolin. As for how to let it be discovered reasonably without arousing suspicion, magicians have their own methods. The legendary mages who finished making this blue diamond were already in a tangle. Yes, although Gretel sent a lot of materials to the teacher, filling several large boxes, but it's not enough. 1 legend, very rich. 2 legends, okay. 3 legends, be sparing. 4 legends. Use the 4 legends together and it will become tight immediately. Every day, every time, when doing experiments, you must be very, very careful, plan the dosage in advance, and then concentrate on controlling the devil, lest even a little bit of it leaks out. And the more I study it, the more I feel it's not enough. Lord Jade Crown separates different radioactive elements. It takes a box full of inexplicable dust to separate a small test tube or even a tiny bit the size of a fingernail. Your Excellency, the space-time barrier is studying to resist rays. There are too few radioactive materials and the rays are too weak, so it is really impossible to start the research. As for the Lord of Thunder, His Excellency uses those radioactive elements to stimulate rays. Basically, 1 piece is consumed with 1 pinch, and 1 piece is consumed with 1 pinch. Not to mention Lady Song of the Deep. Helena is already studying how to add this radioactive power to the energy supply system of the Mage Tower. It is conceivable that if her research is successful, the materials required will definitely be an astronomical number. The experimental materials that I originally thought were very rich have already disappeared by a third in the past half-month. As for this thing, the Parliament has no reserves at all. During this time, Lord Jade Crown mobilized the entire Alchemy Guild to analyze all the ores in the library. They looked at each one by one. Either there was no radioactivity at all, or the radioactivity was so low that it made them want to cry. "Where did these little Gretel things come from?" Lord Time Barrier asked the Lord of Thunder quietly. "Elven Secret Realm. Can we get some more?" "It's best not to." The Lord of Thunder shook his head slowly. "There is a legend guarding the Elven Secret Realm. A legend relying on the big forest. In his home court, his power can be at least 1 level higher. If we really fight, the loss will be too great, and it is unnecessary. It's not like elves don't have legends." On Everlasting Island, he had heard at least 7 or 8 dozen legendary names just once when he went there. If they really force their way into the secret realm, the elves will feel insulted and may send a bunch of experts to fight back. The Parliament must now gather all its strength in order to maintain its defense against the Glory Holy See. Why bother provoking the elves at this time? Then, can you write a letter to little Gretel and ask him to get some more? He may not be able to do it. The Lord of Thunder continued to shake his head. Little Gretel couldn't get these materials by himself. the little guy's abilities simply couldn't escape from that kind of place. In other words, it must have cost him a lot of big price. Maybe, he brought all the forest guards near the elf secret realm to treat them. In exchange for the favor, he collected so many boxes of things to send to them. Apart from anything else, what a huge favor it would be to let a legendary elf elder take action and inspire the ancient vine bird to send a message thousands of miles away. If you can figure it out on your own, it's better to figure it out yourself. Is it possible to get some from the earth element? Summoning the earth element is something that most magicians can do. The difference is only the strength of the summoned object. Ordinary earth element leader, earth element elder, earth element lord, earth element king. Several legends found a secluded place and took action together. Soon, they summoned an earth elemental king who was more than 10 meters tall and had a rich yellow light flowing from his body. It leaned down, took a long breath, and sucked up all the iron ore, copper ore, demantoid garnet, mica, and other stones that were the price of the summons, and then made a buzzing sound. My name is Abilian Hutchapatutu. Just saying the name took more than a full minute. According to the convention of elemental creatures, this name is only less than 1/10 of their full name. After finishing speaking, he lowered his head and looked at the legends. What's the matter with the powerful human being who summoned me to this world? Your Majesty Abilian, as the host of this summons, the Lord of Thunder slowly stepped forward and saluted the other party. He opened a box, and immediately, the fiery power lost the cover of the magic circle and began to boil. We would like to ask you if you have seen this mineral. If so, I hope you can get some for us. This is. The Earth Elemental King lowered his head, took another long breath, and sucked the boiling minerals in the box into his body. Soon, his huge body began to beep, twist, crack, and emit a bright light. I know this is the fire in the earth, the fire in the stone, the eternal fire. Powerful humans, you have provided me with the opportunity to advance, and Abilian wants to repay you, here waiting. His huge body disappeared quietly. One day later, he appeared again, bringing with him a pitch-black earth elemental king with liquid flowing all over his body. He has, let him give it to you. Several legendary mages took a step back reflexively. It's not that I dislike it, it's just that, the smell of asphalt is so stinky. Last day for double monthly pass. Last day for double monthly pass. Please everyone, if you still have monthly votes, vote quickly. Vote today, 1 vote is worth 2 votes. The cat held up a large blue diamond with its paws and asked for votes. No radioactive blue diamond cat? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Wolf2 for the reward of 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1140. It does pay to talk to elementals. Although the price is quite high, and the 2 elemental kings require double prices, it is not unaffordable. Activate the summoning array. The legendary mage has a lot of power. Or, with the advent of steam engines, the mining efficiency of dwarves has increased. Gem. I just made a fortune recently. Besides, even if I haven't made a fortune, the Magic Council cannot afford the legendary mage. Not only did they successfully obtain the fire in the earth, the fire in the stone, the original eternal fire from the asphalt elemental king, but they also got a lot of information. For example, this kind of mineral exists in the material world, and there are quite a lot of it. For example, in the earth elemental realm, there are ores that can help it burn, and there are also ores that can extinguish this flame. For example, in the water elemental realm, there is primordial water that can extinguish the primeval fire. What? Specifically, what kind of ore and what kind of water? The elemental king said that this is another price. We won't get close there. The asphalt elemental king kept dripping sticky asphalt drop by drop all over his body, and replied in a buzzing voice. Whether it is accelerating combustion or extinguishing the original fire, it will not be good for us, it will have very big disadvantages and will slow down the pace of our advancement. In the final analysis, these things are also available here, you can try slowly. They swept away all the ores and gems, expressed satisfaction with the transaction, and slowly disappeared within the summoning circle. The legendary mages looked at each other at the ores on the ground and smiled bitterly. The radioactive energy they felt in such a large pile of ore was worse than the few boxes sent by little Gretel. Forget it, let's look for it slowly. Activate all the magicians and bring back some ore for testing wherever you go. The research of the legendary mages is slowly advancing. The miserable archmage Baebo has transformed into a deliverer man, driving a small airship and embarking on the road to the secret realm of elves. Across the ocean. Come to the new world. Fly to the land of eagles. Thousands of miles southward. Climb over the mountains, come to the big forest, and then control the airship to hover above the forest, trying to declare your presence. Sure enough, soon a golden eagle flew up and came to greet him. Who are you? What are you doing here? The golden eagle had a wingspan of more than 5 meters and its feathers were as strong as iron. It flapped its wings and shouted loudly from a distance of more than a mile, refusing to get closer. From his voice to his posture, it can be said that he is full of vigilance. This is a fertile forest. Outsiders are prohibited. No entry. I don't want to force my way in either. Judging from the aura of this golden eagle, although it is definitely not level 15, there are dozens of elves standing behind it, a half-legendary elf warrior, and an elf legend. I was so stupid that I forced my way in. In fact, I was sent here just to prevent a fight. If a legend breaks into another legend's territory and they disagree, they can really start a fight. For someone like me who is not legendary yet, the other party can listen to me well. Archmage Baebo stood at the head of the airship, wearing a hunting robe and spreading his hands forward. I have no ill intentions. I am a friend. I am the senior brother of Master Gret Nordmark. I came here specifically to find him and deliver a batch of letters and supplies to him. Who? Damn it, Warcraft doesn't know human names, right? Or, if you know it, you don't care, and you don't remember it at all? It's the nature servant who came to our forest some time ago and came to treat everyone. Wait. After hearing this description, Golden Eagle's attitude softened a lot, and his voice became less alert. It flapped its wings twice, hovered in a small circle in the air, and thrust diagonally toward the outside of the forest. Follow me. Wait here, don't trespass. Archmage Baebo followed it to a forest clearing and stopped the airship. The golden eagle flew away and returned early the next morning. 2 figures, one behind the other, jumped off the eagle's back. Master Baebo. It's actually you. The first person was actually an acquaintance, Ms. Jasmine, who opened an adventure shop and restaurant in the small town of Waltham. She walked quickly forward, bowed respectfully, and then turned around to introduce to the second person. Sister Uge, I know this person. He is Archmage Baebo, the senior brother of Mage Nodmark. I spent some time with them in the Eagle Country, so it is him. It turns out to be Archmage Baebo. Ashu Isong's attitude immediately softened. She stepped forward with a smile and stretched out her right hand. Nice to meet you. I'm Ashmoon Song. I've heard Gretel talk about you before. Are you looking for him? He hasn't been in the forest recently. What? Archmage Baebo seemed to have received a blow in the head. I worked so hard to come this far, and you tell me that the person has run away. This didn't take long. Teacher, it only took a little more than a month from the time the teachers received the things from Greet to the time they sorted them out and sent them over. I drove an airship and drove for 12 hours a day, and I never stopped for a day. In just 2 months, where did Greet go? In such a short period of time, the teacher and the others haven't figured it out yet. Could it be that little Gretel has made another breakthrough? Gretel did have a breakthrough. After all, he doesn't want to study atomic weights, atomic nuclei, protons and neutrons, alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays, how to rub atomic bombs with your hands. These problems are not what he, an 11th level, no, now 12th level little magician, should study. He hasn't finished memorizing the 6-ring spell yet. I haven't researched it all yet. He won't bother with this. In the previous life, such difficult problems were studied by top men such as Rutherford, Bohr, and Einstein. Benchmarking this world is what the legendary mages study. For a little guy like him, he just needs to have a name in the laboratory. It would be best if, after the teacher and the others study it, they can get a gamma knife for him to use. Greet is more concerned about how to treat radiation damage. He did countless experiments with mice, and still couldn't decide on a treatment. Regarding Ms. Jasmine's father's illness, there is no way to treat it. In fact, Greet had some suspicions that the elf might have been exposed to too much radiation and his genes had collapsed. When it comes to the genetic level, he really has no way or dare to operate it, so he can only let Mr. Selwyn continue to be sealed in the ancient tree. In addition, another research direction of Greet is to heal the trauma of the forest. There is no solution to the pollution in the periphery. It seems that the only option is to shovel up the pollutants, seal them in lead boxes, and bury them deeply. And inside, that blazing flame, maybe there is still some way to do it? Greet patiently conducted the experiment. The samples that Udian brought back to him were divided into countless parts, one by one, and various minerals were added. Samples from contaminated areas, doped with minerals, all failed without any change. The samples at the entrance to the secret realm were mixed with various minerals. Thousands of minerals were all mixed together, but it still failed. The radioactivity decline curve of the sample is still smooth and has not changed due to doping minerals. Finally, Greet turned the target of the experiment to the parts of the burning mineral veins that Udian brought back from the center of the elf secret realm. Those samples, even Udian, can only wear 600 pounds of lead armor, lie down very far away, and urge the vegetation to grow forward. Let the vegetation roll up a burning part and quickly throw it into the box. The tree root itself is also burned into a large piece and falls into the box together. Stop for a moment, use a lot of natural power to appease, bribe, and coax the little tree to continue helping to get another piece. Do this for a while, stop for a while, and beware of violent burning and explosion of mineral veins anytime and anywhere. Even if Udian is a half-legendary elf warrior with a profound accumulation of natural power, he is still exhausted. It took 5 days to collect 2 large boxes of samples. Then, packing and sealing, the box is specially made to withstand the extremely powerful heat and fatal damage. By giving one of these 2 boxes of samples to the Lord of Thunder, Gretel was really in a huge favor. With the last box left, Gretel carefully opened it remotely. Divide it into countless small portions, one by one, and shovel them into lead boxes containing various ores. I'm so tired, I feel that the stronger the radioactivity, the greater the interference with the operation of mental power, even the observation of the arcane eye is interfered with. What do magic and radioactive substances have in common? Separated by dozens of meters of corridors and 3 layers of lead doors, remotely operating an invisible servant while holding burning samples was a great test for Gretel's mental strength. If when studying samples from contaminated areas, he needs to take a break after loading 50 or 60 boxes of samples, when studying samples from the entrance to a secret realm, he needs to take a break after loading 20 boxes of samples, then, when loading burning mineral veins. After packing 2 boxes, you need a break. Fall. The invisible servant's operating sense has simply degraded from using arms and fingers to operating with a laparoscope, and then to carrying a long bamboo pole and operating 2 meters apart. Even so, Gretel gritted his teeth and operated each one by himself, determined not to let others get started. No change, no change, no change, no change. The 100th or, no change. Number 150 or, no change. The 200th copy, the 300th copy, the 500th copy. Ah! Why is it burning? It's burning. Greet was in a hurry. At the critical moment, Cyrilla was still the one with the most strength, and her breath spurted into the tunnel and froze. Gretel let out a long breath, his hands and feet became weak, and he sat down on the ground. Thank God, there was no explosion. I went back and forth like this and did countless experiments. Finally, when a sample was poured into the lead box, the cloud chamber enveloped it, and Gretel suddenly opened his eyes. The reaction is slowed down. The burning stopped. Is this the borax he is looking for? Mineral No 1593, he turned around and shouted. Mineral number 1593. Get 5 more copies. Repeat the experiment. Double monthly pastime. Last 4 hours. Everyone, please work hard. If you have tickets, please give them to me. Keep me on the fantasy monthly ticket list for a few more days. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1141. Half an hour later, Elder Fahim, Anaralinj, Idian, and several other elves who stayed at the outpost swarmed over. Each of them took a copy of mineral number 1593, the words written on the label of the mineral box, translated, it is probably similar to moonstone or moonming sand, and followed the operating procedures formulated by Greet, step by step. Then, a group of elves held their breath and opened the cloud chamber, or directly covered it with spiritual power to observe the burning ore. The burning has slowed. It does seem to be slowing down. Is it that simple? Can you put out the burning veins by pouring the moonstone in? We have been searching for the answer for thousands of years but have not found it. Is it so simple? The elves were whispering to each other, with expressions of surprise, joy, and disbelief on their faces. Elder Fahim stood there in a daze, squinting his eyes and looking far away. His back was stooped, and the skin on his face and hands was sagging. At first glance, he looked like a weathered old tree. No, it's not that they haven't found it after searching for thousands of years, but that the elves didn't look for it at all. The elves who are proud of their magic have regarded magic as the only solution from the beginning. Even if I thought about using minerals, I would just use various metals to form partitions. I did not pour all the minerals that can be found in the world into the burning veins like greed. Don't rush to celebrate yet, he said slowly. At the same time, a somewhat erratic and hoarse voice came to my ears. Wait, the experiment is not finished yet. Elder Fahim called out. On the left, Gretel happened to turn around and look over. When their eyes met, Gretel smiled and made a pleased gesture. The little guy still respects the old man very much. Elder Fahim felt at ease, smiled and shook his head. You come, you come. This experiment was designed by you from beginning to end. Of course, you will preside over the next step. Greet bowed slightly to him. Then he turned his eyes towards the warehouse. This, moonstone? Moon sand? How many more are there? As soon as he asked, there was an explosion in the crowd. Gretel leaned back reflexively, and when he looked again, he saw that Udian had disappeared from the spot. Gretel. I know you are anxious, but you don't have to be so anxious. Why bother just running out of the air and making explosive sounds? It's only a few steps from here to the warehouse. The difference between 100 meters and 5 seconds is only 5 seconds. As soon as he finished complaining, a figure flashed in front of him, and Idion had already rushed back. The half-step legend calmly stood with his hands behind his back, as if I haven't moved at all, the person who ran so fast just now has nothing to do with me. Luckily, there's still half a basket left. This stuff was selling cheaply at the time, so they just picked a basket back, probably, about 100 pounds. Greed frowned, struggled, and said nothing. Looking at Udian and then at Elder Fahim, his eyes were wandering, obviously in trouble. Udian waited patiently for half a minute and stamped his foot. Just tell me what you want me to do. Even if I have to carry these moon sands and go to the center of the secret realm, I will go. Yes, Greet Elder Fahim advised slowly from the side. Repairing the elf secret realm has been our dream for thousands of years. To this end, we have lost countless compatriots, and what you see in the cemetery is only a small part. If we can succeed, we are also willing to make more sacrifices. He looked around, and every elf he looked at nodded firmly to him. Elder Fahim patted his chest gently. Including me, an old man, it's not like I can't be sacrificed. Just tell me what needs to be done. But I can't just let people sacrifice themselves. Moreover, the number of elves is so small that they cannot afford to sacrifice. Gretel smiled bitterly inwardly. He took a deep breath, threw all the messy thoughts to the back of his mind, and began to design an experimental method. Let's first take half of the Ueming sand and repeat the experiment. This time, pour more burning ore into it and see how well it stops burning. Okay, no problem. Idion is gearing up. Greed hesitated for a moment. If this experiment is successful, I hope you can carry these moonlight sands and go to the center of the secret realm. Pour them into the burning veins. Is it enough to pour it all in? Udian said subconsciously. Greed shook his head slowly. Don't pour it in all at once. Just like you did before, dig some ore and put it into the moonlight sand. Watch it burn out, then dig some more and put it in. By the way, remember to put a lot of crushed lead in the moonlight sand. Peace. What? I still have to carry hundreds of pounds of broken lead. Idion's legs weakened, and he was already considering whether to dismantle his lead armor and throw it directly into the moonlight sand. Greed is still struggling. Actually, 50 pounds is really too little. This kind of thing is only useful if it is poured down in tons. How many tons of borax were poured into Chernobyl at that time? Chernobyl was still just a nuclear reactor with limited fuel. Here in the elf secret realm, it seems that the entire uranium mine is on fire. Even for a simple experiment, it would take a ton of borax to be useful, right? However, a whole ton of borax, not to mention the question of whether Udian can carry it on his back, he has space equipment, so he can ignore this for the time being. After it falls, it needs to be stirred, right? Stirring requires a lot of radiation, right? During the Chernobyl incident, it seemed like a helicopter fell down. What should we do now? Flying monster? Or a flying golem? Or is it manpower thrown in from the edge? Forget it, don't think about this for now. Let's gather enough borax first. Do you want to go for a run outside the forest? Back and forth for a month? Or maybe we only need borax this time, so there won't be so many people passing by, and the speed can be faster? If it's Ueming sand, I still have some here, Elder Fahim interjected slowly. He glanced at the surprised Greed. What to do? Moonlight sand can be used to make medicine and alchemy materials. It has some uses. It's not easy to go out here at the outpost. I have a lot of things like this that can be stored for a long time. This a lot was really beyond Greed's expectation. Elder Fahim dragged out a very large wooden box, which was full, and contained a whole box of translucent white moon sand. He pointed his hand at Gretel. "Take it and use it. Take as much as you want. This box is estimated to be more than 1 cubic meter, according to the density of borax, it can weigh almost 2 tons, are you going to use it until the end of time? As long as it is not made into boric acid solution and washed in large quantities, everyone who comes out of the radiation area will be washed one by one. If it is purely for medicinal purposes, even if you are an immortal species, it can be used until you are buried, right?" Greet cursed crazily. He requisitioned all the borax without hesitation, leaving only 1 kilogram for the elder. "Then mix in broken lead blocks of equal volume not equal weight and give them to Idion. It's up to you, boss." "Wait, draw my blood first." Idion bravely went in again. This time, when he came out, he was beaming with joy, and every hair was exuding joy. "It works. It really works. Little Greet, I followed your instructions and shoveled the burning ores in piece by piece, and they really went out. In the end, I poured the whole box of Ueming sand into a fire port, that fire outlet was actually suppressed a little. That is the immortal fire, the eternal fire. How many seniors and legendary masters have worked hard to suppress it a little bit. As soon as the magic power disappears, the eternal fire will rekindle. Now, when a box of Ueming sand is poured down, the burning ore can be extinguished. This method is so simple. Sit down first, sit down first." Greet pressed him down forcefully, drew blood, examined his body under a microscope, and performed various body examinations. Idion sat still obediently and couldn't stop talking. "It's just moonlight sand, just pour it in. This thing is not expensive. It doesn't cost a single gold coin for such a big box, so transportation is a little troublesome. The lead blocks are not expensive, you can buy them casually. So, how much moonlight sand is needed to stop the burning of the entire mineral vein?" Greet finished a blood smear and couldn't help but ask after hearing his lively words. Idion didn't even think about it. According to previous experiments, if you mix a box of Ueming sand and broken lead blocks with 1/10 of the box of ore, there will definitely be no problem. If you add 1/5 of the box, it will be a bit troublesome. Let's see if it can be mixed evenly. Adding 1/3 of it is probably not enough. What about the whole vein? Idion fell silent. He is a warrior, not a spellcaster, nor is he a legendary level spellcaster who masters the core secrets of the elven realm. How big is the entire vein? As far as he could see, there were countless gaps on the mountain top in the center of the elf secret realm, and there were dots of light everywhere. Beyond the top of the mountain, there were once residential areas, gardens, schools, and martial arts venues. Idion didn't want to think about it. But it is said that this place was chosen to build the settlement because it was located on a mineral vein rich in magical power. Gretel stared at the microscope, swiping and swiping, filling up a piece of paper. After comparing it with the previous data, he breathed a sigh of relief and turned around and asked, "How many reserves does this vein have? How many tons, or how many thousands of tons?" "Have no idea." "How much area does this vein cover?" "Have no idea." "Okay, how big is the entire elf secret realm? How high is the mountain in the center? Where there may be mineral veins, how big do you estimate they are, and how deep are the mineral veins buried?" "The center of the secret realm has a radius of about 30 miles, Idion thought slowly. "The mountain in the center is not very high. It is less than 500 meters from the ground. There is a burning range of mineral veins around it, at least, it is 10 miles away, right?" Gretel did a quick mental calculation. 500 meters, times the diameter of 10 miles, times the density, oh, I don't want to forget it. In short, if you throw in hundreds of thousands of tons of borax, you should be able to do it, right? From Beidou, the world's largest uranium mine, the MacArthur River uranium mine in Canada, has an annual output of 7,356 tons and proven reserves of 241 million pounds. Anyway, come on, Elves. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 10,000 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1142. So, little Gretel went to get ore. Archmage Baebo asked in disbelief. Getting mineral sand is such a cumbersome physical work. Is it worth Gretel's doing it himself? Little Gretel is so lazy. If he can ride a silver moon deer, he must not walk. If he can carry things in a space bag, he must not hold things with his hands. If a problem can be solved with magic, he must not use his hands. He was trained as a knight because his teacher couldn't stand his reaction ability and sent a message to the people from the God of War temple to train him under his supervision. When he entered the dwarf mines before, saying that he wanted to solve the problem of mithril smelting, he never touched the hammer from the beginning to the end. Later, when he went to the dwarf royal court and participated in the whole king selection battle, he could still not touch the hammer from the beginning to the end. How would such a lazy person get mineral sand? Are you sure this is real Gretel? Hasn't he been impersonated or controlled by some strange person? Yes, Greet said that his research here has temporarily encountered a bottleneck. Ashu Edge replied with a smile. In his words, being idle is idle anyway, so why not take a walk around? To the west of the big forest, the mountain range known as the spine of the earth is still very interesting. He wants to see the country on the mountain range. Oh! Archmage Baebo understood immediately. To put it bluntly, it's just that the research is stuck and I want to take advantage of it. Magicians often do this kind of thing. Such was the case with the young magician in his laboratory. If it weren't for the lab system, I could go out looking for inspiration 4 days a week. Of course, the vast majority of young magicians, called researchers, are actually magic coolies. They just work obediently in the laboratory. What are they looking for inspiration? Low-level coolies don't need inspiration. But when it comes to Greet's level, or to be precise, to the level where he is qualified to conduct research independently, inspiration is very necessary. For example, the conjuration system's Time Walker McDowell's legend. Cough. This example is not very good, please try another one. For example, he and junior sister Philby, no matter how intense their research or busy they are with experiments, they still have to go to concerts, operas, and various performances every now and then. Maybe the girl dancing on the stage and the beautiful lines drawn by her fingertips can make the difficulty of a certain spell configuration suddenly clear? So, is it convenient for me to find him? Archmage Baebo asked with a smile. He picked up the old vine bird and turned it around in his hand. The little bird on the ancient vine hung its head feebly, its belly was bulging, and it jumped on the palm of the Archmage. The height of its jump was never more than 1 centimeter. Ashu Isong asked subconsciously. Is it full? It wasn't until I said a word that I realized something was wrong. This is a magic prop woven from ancient vines. Although it looks a bit intelligent, it is also simulated by magic. It is not a real bird. How can it have dietary needs and how can it be full? Unexpectedly, Archmage Baebo laughed. While laughing, he nodded repeatedly. Yes, I am indeed full. This time when I came here, the teacher and we made another batch of goods for little Gretel, and they are all packed in here. Space equipment. Top-grade space equipment. But put it on so hard. There are already 1,000 sets of the measuring tubes that have just been rolled out and that Greet specifically requested to develop. They can make sounds and count. The teacher's original words were, "Little Greet can't make it himself, so of course we have to prepare more for him. At least, it should be enough for him to install several laboratories." When I heard this sentence, junior sister Philby's face, "Teacher, you don't regard the labor of your disciples as labor. For 1,000 measuring tubes, everyone either spends research funds and asks the Alchemy Guild to urgently customize them, or everyone rubs their hands day and night. In addition to the measuring tube, there are also some magic items, some magic equipment, 500 copies of the superconducting suit, 500 copies of the purple scalestone, 2 generators, 2 microscopes, 2 cubic meters of clear glass for test tubes, 2 tons of alcohol, 100 pounds of stainless steel, 2 tons of bleaching powder, 1 ton of cement. There's nothing I can do about it. Gretel, this little guy, starts splashing around with things. How long have you been out before you can cry in a letter? We are almost running out of test tubes. The alcohol is almost gone. The syringe needle is almost gone. Woohoo, although I have that little monster called gold coin, which can rub all kinds of small objects with my hands, I can't make something out of nothing. Teacher, help me, if it's convenient, please help me bring some raw materials." The words in the letter made those who heard it cry and those who saw it sad. Even Archmage Baebo read it and wanted to use his own money to get something for Greet. As a result, the little ancient vine bird was stuffed so full with all kinds of miscellaneous things that it almost burst. If it weren't for the fear that Gretel's space bag wouldn't be able to contain it, I'd be afraid that the airship would have to be filled. Aizewij looked at the ancient vine bird silently, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. She had personally experienced the loading capacity of this small bird. It could hold so many of them and still pull out, in her opinion, endless supplies. Such a large space is filled with equipment. Greet's master really dotes on him. Ahem, can I go find him? Archmage Baebo held up the ancient vine bird in his hand. This thing must be handed over to him. Besides, when I came here this time, the teacher brought some papers and new research results, and I had to explain them to him in person. If it's convenient, can you give me some directions? Ashmoonsong laughed. She stood on tiptoes, looked far to the west, and shook her head. They have been walking for many days. Now I don't know where they have gone. Have they reached the big mountains? I don't know which city they have reached. It's quite troublesome to find them. How about I send a message to the elders first? The elder is willing to meet the visitor first. So, Ashuisong showed the way, and Archmage Baebo drove the airship and headed towards the hinterland of the rainforest. As for finding Gretel, it's okay, Idian and Della are with him. A half-step legendary warrior, a high-level spellcaster, and Cyrilla is also following him. Gretel can't suffer. Greet, who can't stand the loss, is trying hard to climb the mountain. He was willing to go out and play with him. On the one hand, the research was stuck in a bottleneck and he couldn't find the direction. There was no point in struggling. On the other hand, he was forced to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore. There is no way, this elf sister hasn't stopped thinking about letting him learn the leopard form. Look at you. Look at you. Appa has learned how to transform. He can become bigger or smaller, shrink his horns, and walk easily in the woods. You have learned the form of a leopard, and you haven't learned it in such a long time. So skilled. Whenever Greet had a little free time and wanted to sit down and rest in the forest, look at the flowers and trees, and go fishing with Cyrilla, she would catch her and practice. I had no choice but to find a reason to escape. Fortunately, Idian didn't hold him an exercise like this. After escaping, I tried to train him twice. I found Gretel lying on the ground and refused to move, so I let him go. In the words of this half-step legend, forget it, you should just practice magic honestly. Actually, you don't even need to practice magic. It's serious to practice your healing skills well and find a few more people to protect you. How rare is the legend of treatment direction? Much harder to find than the legend in the combat direction. Even if the elves are naturally friendly, even if the legendary warriors know a few healing techniques, there are only a handful of masters who specialize in healing. These are all treasures, supported by legendary warriors and protected by a few ancient trees on a daily basis. By the way, there is another way, which is to increase your levels and then practice the dragon shape transformation. When there are no other people around, you can transform into the dragon shape. At least you can carry it a few more times. As for the other fellow traveler, the elf spellcaster Delavan Luja, they would not care about his business. In fact, this female elf is a bit withdrawn. She doesn't speak much in daily life. She rarely speaks and only speaks a few words. Greed walked with her for more than 10 days and heard her say no more than 20 sentences. In total, it was less than 100 words. As a result, Gretel was able to spend a relatively relaxed and happy life. Riding Appa or riding a phantom pony, riding in the rainforest, looking at flowers, trees, grass, birds, and animals, there are different interesting things to discover every day. At night, Idian could catch game for him if he made any move. Enjoy game and listen to stories. Idian, we are going to get moonlight sand this time. Do we need to dig it ourselves? Mining? You have a beautiful idea. Such large mines are all in the hands of local nobles. Even if you want to dig, others will not let you in. Then, are we going to buy it? Who should we buy it from? The local indigenous people? Or the people from the glorious Holy See? Speaking of the glory Holy See, Gretel couldn't help but wrinkled his nose, showing a look of disgust. Opposite the bonfire, the disgust on Idian's face was even worse than his. Glorious Holy See? We don't care about them. We look for people from the indigenous kingdoms, nobles, or priests, it depends on who owns the mine. Ah! The indigenous kingdom is still there. Greed was curious. From what he had seen before, the golden plates, golden bowls, golden crowns, golden masks, golden scepters, and the regular shipments of gold, silver, and gems that the glorious Holy See had snatched, it was obvious that they had established their rule. With everything like this, can the indigenous kingdom still exist? Of course Idian gave him a strange look. He picked up a piece of firewood, scratched on the ground, drew a long mountain range, and poked dozens of small dots on it. They suffered heavy losses and were robbed of a large area of territory by the glory Holy See. Now, their territory is probably here in the southern part of the plateau. The mountain roads are rugged and the terrain is complex, so the Holy See has not been able to extend its hands all over. Besides, he paused. Suddenly there was a light in front of Greet, and a piece of hot coal was lightly lifted and fell on the southern part of the mountain range. Their god is still there. Still there? God. Demigod. Legend. Or is it like the Eagle Kingdom, a totem beast that has not even touched the edge of legend? Greet was very curious. He looked up at Idian. Before he could ask, a bowl of soup was poured down. The blazing red charcoal fire was doused in this way, leaving only a few embers, feebly emitting white smoke. Delavan Losh's cold voice sounded. About to die. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1143. Yes, their god is dying. Under the shade of the ancient tree, Elder Fahim made a cup of leaf water and pushed it towards Archmage Baebo. The old man half squinted his eyes and looked into the distance, as if he was lost in memories. You should also feel it, right? That smell of decay, step by step towards death, struggling desperately, but unable to do anything, even doing things to dig your own foundation, just to extend your life a little bit. Archmage Baebo nodded in horror. A few years ago, when dealing with the year without summer, he followed his teacher to kill the demigod and sensed that aura from a long distance. Like a patient on the verge of death, and like a putrid quagmire. That kind of unwillingness, that kind of greed, that kind of feeling that one would rather overdraw the vitality of oneself and others, but also hang on the edge of the cliff of living. Even if he passed a little distance and felt that little bit, he felt sick for a long time. To be honest, the undead creatures in Black Crow Swamp have a cleaner smell than them. But, when he followed his teacher, he was wrapped in the auras of the legendary mages and quietly crossed over the forest. He was still far, far away from this outpost. Elder Fahim could actually recognize his aura. Legendary Master, is he so strong? Then, how strong is the other party? Is little Gretel in danger? He suppressed his emotions deep in his heart, leaned forward, and asked worriedly. He also admired little Gretel's ability to get into trouble. When he is less than level 5, he can provoke the young silver dragon. When he has just passed level 9, he dares to fight head-on with the plague girl in the new world. When he finally reaches level 10, look, the eagle god and the snake god are waiting for him. That's what he, a near-legendary magician, can challenge head-on. Well now, a child who is only at level 12 has gone to the territory of that dying god, or demigod, or at least a legend. Archmage Baebo was very suspicious of Gretel's ability to cause trouble. When he rushed over, he saw Gretel fleeing for his life while being devoured by the god. The opponent is quite strong. Elder Fahim sat still and looked at Archmage Baebo with a smile. Do you remember the demigod you killed last time? He was its slave god, although the relationship between the slave gods and the main god here is relatively loose. You can probably imagine how powerful that main god is. As for the danger, you can rest assured. Idion is with him, as well as Luja, a half-step legendary warrior, a high-level spellcaster, and the little silver dragon. As long as Little Grey is special, you should be able to save him by jumping around. Could you please show me the way? I'd better go see him. Archmage Baebo was anxious. Not jumping around? Will Little Greed stop jumping around? No matter where he goes, if there is no trouble, he can jump around and cause trouble. Gretel, who is considered to be someone who will cause trouble even if there is no trouble, would definitely scream that he was wronged if he heard his senior brother's comments. Where is he jumping around? When did he jump around? When did he not have to take action when he saw someone being injured, sick in large areas, and pleading in pain? As for what happened next was not what he wanted to be like. Besides, didn't he find strong foreign aid every time and get it done every time? Like the eagle god, the snake god, etc., he did not rush forward rashly, but called the parliament for reinforcements in time, and everyone made a fortune together. Of course, he didn't hear his senior brother's complaints now, so he didn't complain. He followed Idion, riding the phantom pony, traveling easily on the mountain road. The higher you go up, the more rugged the mountain path becomes. Thin velvet-like grass is spread among the rugged rocks, and scattered flowers can sometimes be seen blooming. Blue, purple, green, deep colors, reminding you how strong the ultraviolet rays are here. In the distance, an antelope with slender hooves glanced at them, jumped up a few times, and went to graze on a higher cliff. Gretel muttered softly. Why are they running away? I won't eat it. It means your aura is not sufficiently restrained, or your affinity with nature is not enough. Idion, who was walking in front, gave him a stern look. Natural walkers should not have disturbed them when they walked by. Okay, it's my fault again. Gretel shrugged. He looked back at the bottom of the mountain on the back of the phantom horse. It was extremely flat and the endless green stretched to the horizon. In the green forest, a long, somewhat dirty river meanders into the distance. No cliffs, no crags, no canyons, no waterfalls. All you can see is flat. While trekking in the forest, you can still occasionally see the terrain differences, which are completely hidden under the dense canopy of trees. This rainforest is so beautiful. Greet admired sincerely. Ahead, Udian raised his voice and urged. Don't be in a daze, let's go. It's getting dark soon. We have to get to a place where we can stay before it gets dark. Ah, can't you live everywhere here? Greet muttered, urging the phantom pony to catch up. The horse condensed by magic has smoke in its hooves, and it treads on the rugged mountain road as if it were walking on flat ground. Gretel didn't even need to lean forward or backward. He could just sit quietly on the horse and be lifted up by the phantom pony. The savages suffered a little more. He hugged Apie's neck tightly, and his whole body was almost pressed against the silver moon deer's back. After successfully advancing, Apie shrank completely, with his back only as high as Gretel's shoulders. A pair of huge wide corners have also been temporarily retracted to facilitate traveling in forests and mountain trails. However, the silver moon deer is an entity after all, unlike the phantom pony, which is half virtual and half real. Step by step, you still have to step on the stone. Bernard leaned forward and backward, almost sliding down several times, and could only hold the horse's neck tightly. Udian, how far is it to the campsite? Gretel looked around on the back of the phantom colt. Along the way, there are no traces of repaired roads, no houses, bridges, walls, fields, in short, no signs of human existence. If you simply want to find a place to live, then you can open a mage cabin anywhere. We're almost there. Udian looked up, gestured left and right, and gave the answer with certainty. Don't worry, there is a village up there that will interest you. Besides, living in a cave is much more comfortable than living in a mage's hut. As a mage, Gretel really couldn't agree. But the legendary warrior said this. Out of curiosity, he also wanted to see what the local indigenous residences looked like. Along the way, he had already seen reed-woven boat houses, houses made of wood that looked like normal residential houses, wooden stilt houses, beds made of smooth wooden platforms. On such a high mountain, the local indigenous villages may look different from others. After climbing a mountain and crossing a ridge, Greet finally saw a row of caves in the distance. They are arranged on a high rocky mountain, dotted from top to bottom. Some are tall and some are short, some are deep and some are shallow. If you sweep them roughly, there will be at least 20 or 30 of them. From a distance, it looked a bit like the Turkish cave monastery he had seen in photos in his previous life. Aren't there still gods worshipped here? Gretel created a communication technique and quietly sent the words to Udian's ears. Udian looked back at him in surprise. Your senses are quite sensitive. That's right, follow me when the time comes and don't run around. If you violate their taboo, we may not be able to defeat you, but it will be very troublesome. They meandered to the foot of the mountain. Udian put his hands to his mouth and shouted a few times. After a while, several heads emerged from the cave in the rock mountain. They looked down and jumped down. They were nimble little men with dark faces and curly hair. Carrying spears on their backs and carrying bows and arrows, they jumped up and down and landed in front of Udian. The man in the lead, wearing a colorful feather cloak, put his hand on his chest and saluted deeply. Dear Linsing, welcome to your arrival. Are these your companions? What do you need from afar? We only need to stay here for one night. Udian nodded to them kindly. He turned around and called Greet and others, giving instructions one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 people and a deer. Please arrange a cave for us to stay for one night. This request was quickly fulfilled. The indigenous man blew his wooden whistle a few times, and the crowd dispersed with a roar, everyone returning to their places. Gretel followed them, climbing up the narrow road carved out of the sandstone little by little, looking at the caves. Most of the entrances to the caves were no higher than his shoulders. The insides were narrow and deep, dark, and filled with weak flames. A woman in ragged clothes and 3 or 5 children poked their heads inside, and occasionally the sound of a baby crying could be heard. The cave stunk. The smell of human sweat, the smell of animal feces, the smell of rotten and fermented food. Am I staying here tonight? No, I'd rather live in the mage's cabin. Fortunately, he was not arranged to enter these caves, but was guided all the way up to an extremely large cave. The entrance to the cave was 3 people tall, with a wide entrance surrounded by a circle of flat stones. It looked like it was used by the entire tribe for meetings or dinners. The dusk light shines into the cave walls. Greet glanced at it and took a gentle breath. The entire cave, from 3 walls to the ceiling, is covered with magnificent colorful paintings. Using ochre, malachite, and various pigments that Gretel didn't recognize, he painted breathtaking patterns. The sky is full of stars, stretching east and west from the new moon to the full moon to the waning moon, and the sun radiates heat in it. Men armed with spears, bows and arrows, wielding clubs and throwing belts, chased all kinds of huge beasts. Frogs croaked in the grass, golden eagles flew by with open wings, and vultures pecked at the corpses. Huge palms, strange human shapes like aliens. Inside the cave, a shriveled old man walked over slowly with a stooped body and a smell of medicine. Gretel glanced over and couldn't help but step forward quickly. Old man, you. Such a skinny figure. These ribs are protruding one by one. This huge belly is completely out of proportion to the whole person. Is it intestinal obstruction, ascites, or other symptoms? Before he could finish speaking, he was pulled by Yudian. The elf warrior's voice was thin and his tone was urgent. Don't treat him. Gretel, what? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of